A sink coming. 3, 2, 1, sink. Hey. So, this is the introduction to the 4th generation prototype of the Triplane paddle. Okay. So as I go down, I'm going to talk a little bit about it. This was developed because I wanted an alternative paddle to the wing paddle. The wing paddle has been around since the mid-80s, developed by first the Swedes, and then the Norwegians came along. The Norwegians came in and put a twist on it, which apparently improved it. And it gives you some lift. It has a foil edge along the top, but it does require a pretty vertical, high angle and short stroke, because you want to avoid the negative angle that comes about from using a high angle and carrying the blade past your body. So I learned that and was doing that for 5 years. And everybody telling me, oh, you got to take shorter strokes, man. You don't want to go past your hips, your body, because then you get the negative angle, you lose stability, you lose power, all kinds of bad things happen, and who knows. I wanted to put this pad underneath me. I forgot. There it goes. Always good to do that before you sit down. That's my special pad, which you've probably heard about already. So, I developed this instead of this really high angle short stroke, which is what's sort of needed for the wing paddle. I wanted a much longer lower angle. So that's what I've been working on. And I hope the blades stay on the shaft. So you sort of get a little bit of an idea of what that looks like. It can go very long. I can actually touch the back of the boat if I want, and keep it really low, as you see. And I'm getting about maybe 160 degrees total stroke angle there. And rowers that get nice long horizontal low angle strokes, they may only get, if they're sweep rowers with one oar, they may only get 90 degrees. And scullers may get, with 2 oars, may get, maybe 120. No, I don't think they get that much either. Maybe more like 110. I have to look it up. And I think I'm getting closer to like 160 if I want it. Of course, I don't have to take it. All right, I can always go shorter if I want it. Put it in not so far ahead. Now, I usually like to start my paddle with a little bit of rotation and getting all of the power from rotation. Let me set up my Garmin here so I can see how fast I'm going. So that means the difference, because it's low angle, I want to keep my right hand, or my top hand, close to the shoulder. So that's what I'm doing now. And I'm not extending it, and I'm keeping my bottom arm completely extended. So this is sort of a nice exercise. You get an idea. We can look at the blade without falling in. It's a little easier on one side. And go along pretty nice. You can also notice that the release is very clean. You look at the release of kayakers, and they're shoveling water into the sky, particularly if they're going fast or starting a race. So that's what that is. Sometimes I even like to, now this is, let me tell you a little bit about the blade. It's about, I think, 650 square centimeters. It's not far from what a wing blade would be. The shaft is quite a bit longer, so end to end, right now I have it set at about 229 centimeters. Now when I paddle the wing, I'm more like 210 instead of 229. So it's quite a bit longer, but I've been experimenting with that. So this is sort of what it looks like. Okay, what I was going to say, sometimes I like to do sort of a Greenland trick and just really make it super long and feel that rotation. I have tide coming in, and just for fun, I'm going against a bit of a headwind offshore. I'm just going to do a one-side paddle and put a little bit of oomph in it. I'm up to 4.3 miles an hour. I'm up to 5.2. 5.5. 5.7. So I can go pretty good on one side. I couldn't do that with the wing. I tend to be better on that side, my left side. But let me do a little bit here. This is a good drill because with the triplane, because it gets my upper hand used to being really close and low, which is where I want it to be, because that gives me the most extension, keeping it low and close to the body, of course. And the low angle is what I want too. One of the reasons is there's no negative angle to the blade whatsoever. You can sort of see that. I can skim back if I want to practice a little bit of a bracing stroke. That's kind of fun. I mean, I can go almost as fast paddling one side as I can on two sides with the wing blade. Wind is picking up a little bit, so I'm not going to try another speed record. So, what else? Okay, now let's do the real stroke. Right now, this is just sort of an exercise. I get my rotation going. It's nice and slow. It's nice and low. As long as I'm not cheating by pushing this around, I'm getting all of the motion just from rotation. At least I think so. Keeping the bottom arm straight, except when I perhaps take the blade out. Now, the actual stroke will be a little bit different that I've been working on. We start with the top hand, still, point it down a little bit, really close to the shoulder, right? Because that helps us get it out there and get the angle nice and low. But what we can do then is, particularly if we're going to make really long strokes, we extend it. And why we extend that top arm using the triceps and associated chest press muscles, we flex the bottom. So that is very different from the wing paddle stroke, where basically you set your top arm at 90 degrees, about eye level with the hand. You keep it there, bottom arm stays straight, and you only change that during airtime when both blades are out of the water. So there's no extension or flexion of the arms used to power the boat. The muscles, of course, are still used, but in a static way, not in a dynamic way. But let me go back to the This is the long and low. Now I'm doing long and low. Okay, some other advantages here to the low angle, in addition to getting rid of the negative angle, is that, see how close I am, how short my air time is. Now I'm doing longer than I would normally do. Instead of bringing the blade, and you can tell that the paddle is almost going back and touching the boat, because you see the front paddle blade actually coming across, which you wouldn't do normally with a wing paddle. You tend to get your hand across, but not the blade. So you can just tell, and I'm going way back. Now, normally, I would do what happens with the wing, and that I would get my hand across, but not necessarily the blade. So see what at the end of the stroke, the other blade is very close to the water, very close. So minimizing air time. So I would bet, I haven't tried to measure it, but that I have more time of the total stroke cycle with a blade in the water and less air time as a proportion of the total stroke. So that's an advantage, I think. Another advantage, we already talked about the clean release. That's not necessarily just related to the angle. Another advantage is that I'm lifting the blade up a lot less, right? Again, with the wing, again, I have my hand up here, eye level or top of head. You know, if I'm Tim Brabants, I'm reaching for helicopters, you know, way up there, and I got to lift that hand and paddle way up there. So that's got to add up. So here I can just keep it low. So this is low and long. Actually, I would say the low and long is this one. Or I don't have to go that long, but you can see the blade coming across the top of the boat. And if I really wanted to do that, I might do some changes here and even change the surfski to get rid of that hump there, so I don't have to worry about clearing it. Maybe move the volume a little further up, or just get rid of it, put it someplace else, depending upon, right, flat water or downwind or what you're going to do. So this I would call the long. All right, this is sort of, I guess, is more moderate, but I'm still going back, but not as far. I'm still trying to start in the same place. All right, but it's not going back. It's going back well past me, but you can get an idea. Sort of looks like that. Still a big angle, and you might see that better from the front camera. And then if I want, I can even do shorter, right? I don't have to even go back that far. If I don't want to, I can stop at my knees or my hips. And if I want to have a real high cadence, I'm tired of the low cadence, here I go. And I'm effortlessly getting up to 6.2 miles an hour here into a headwind. Not very strong. So I can vary. So I can vary the speed in a sense, because I can start off, and I suspect that most of the power is still going to be at the beginning. I'm getting that lift off the blade when I first put it in, and I'll demonstrate that in a little bit. And then it goes to 90. I don't know how much power there is back there. I should mention that I can go back farther. I have like maybe 160 degrees of potential paddling angle than a rower, because for a rower, their body gets in the way of the handles. When the blades are coming, that would be the stern, right? Going this way. So they're sort of stuck there. And you hear about rowers that the end of the stroke is not very effective at all. They done most of the work with their legs and back, and they do a little bit here with the hands. They can't go back as far. And you hear about backwash, where the blade is actually adding friction. It's not going even as fast as the water's going by. So that's not a problem here. And just to add to that, I find that I can feel power pushing all the way back. Yeah, right even hitting it. So, but that's a bit of a diversion. What I wanted to make clear is that if I want to go fast, I think most of the power is probably still at the front, at the initial, at the catch. So if I want to make use of that, I can just shorten up, still try to get it forward, and shorten up. Now, of course, we can experiment with the angle. I call it the offset and the tip angle here. Right now it's pretty neutral. It's a little bit negative. You see the tip is a little bit behind the axis of the paddle shaft. So that's something that can be experimented with and find the best angle for the type of stroke you want to do. So I have a low gear, right? Really short. Use that front lift, pop it in, super fast cadence. I can have a higher gear, get more distance per stroke, lower cadence by bringing the blade further back. And that may be useful for marathon racing or cruising, although I sort of like the really long one. It's just really fun. All right, it's so I have that, and tests will have to be done to see which is the best, and depending on what. But the main thing is now you have all kinds of different strokes, right? Different strokes for different folks. With the wing paddle, you're stuck into doing this. All right, for the most part. Now you can change your angle a little bit, but that's going to compromise, I think, the lift you get from the wing blade. You sort of want the hand straight up, coming straight across, so it's short, and that's what I didn't like. I mean, I like it sometimes, but I want other strokes. When I go swimming, I don't just do freestyle all the time or backstroke. I typically do all 4 strokes. It feels great to try different strokes, and I don't think it's good to do exactly the same motion all the time. So here is a paddle that lets you do things that you cannot do or cannot do as well with the existing wing paddle. Low and long, or we can go low and moderate, or we can go low and short. All right, we can mix it up, and we could even do high and moderate and high and short and high and long, but I don't think the blade is meant for that. But we can experiment with different designs. So now we have all kinds of new possibilities for paddling a canoe. Now, whether this is going to be the next big thing in paddling, well, for me it is, because I love this blade. I'm not going to give up, I don't think, yet on my wing paddles, but this is great. Oh, and the other thing is using more of the arms, right? So now I can use the arms in my stroke in a dynamic way. All right? So when it said that paddling is not an arm sport, well, that may be the case for the wing paddle. It doesn't have to be the case for the triplane paddle. And that should now, I'm going to turn around as I run into the end of the creek, or the navigable section. Don't want to go to downtown Los Angeles. Let me turn around. So why do I call this the triplane? Well, sort of a long story, but I think the essential characteristics of paddling with this paddle is that, I'm going to make sure that my camera's still running. Yep, it is. Seems to be anyway. So the essential characteristics of this paddle are certainly its low angle. And we eliminate the negative angle when it goes past my body. So if you look at what the paddle blades are doing, they are going in and it's all horizontal. They are moving in a horizontal plane next to the boat. They start close, they move out, they come around back. Okay, so that's a planar movement parallel to the water. The vertical is only to get it in and to get it out again. And that brings me to some other thing which hopefully I'll remember to say. The other thing is that if you look at, because my bottom hand is attached to this, well, if the blade is in a plane of movement, my bottom hand obviously is doing the same thing, and it's going in the same direction, right? It's also planar. So that's the second plane, is my bottom hand and what it's doing, right? And now we look at the top hand, and that's also basically a planar movement. Now it's going in the opposite direction because there's a virtual pivot here in the blade, right? Which is essentially where the oar lock is, virtual oar lock, if you will. But so that's the third. So we have three planes. We have the plane of the paddle. Parallel to that and above is the plane of the bottom hand, following the paddle in the same direction, the same movement, but a smaller radius and above it. And then we have the top hand, which is going in the opposite direction, but still in a plane. So it's like a wedding cake. You have the big bottom tier, you have a middle circular tier, which is next up. Then on the top, you have the top tier, which is parallel to the other two, and it has a smaller radius. So you can call it the wedding cake stroke if you want. All right, so that's the essential characteristic of what this does. Now, whether you like this or not, or think it's crazy or terrific, I think it opens up some possibilities that we haven't been thinking about with paddling. And that is the common accepted wisdom about paddling a sprint or marathon, kayak, or surfski with the wing blade is that you need to have a beginning vertical push down. That's important for a number of reasons. Three reasons are offered for that. One is that it helps me get more power there. It's letting me put my weight on it. I never believed that really was important, but that's what people say. Well, let me hold on my criticism. So you get more power by pushing down, okay? Pushing down also is supposed to lift the boat up. It's displacing less water. And that's going to help you go forward. You're going to shoot forward because you're lifting the boat up, right? You're skimming across the water. And then the last thing is that you need it for stability. You're pushing down hard, and that gives you stability. Putting your weight over onto the paddle, and then the paddle pushes back up on you, and there you go. You're trying to stand up, in a sense, using the paddle sort of a bit like a pole vault in some ways. So my criticisms are that before was simply verbal, was that, well, I don't think you really need to have a vertical component at all. Propellers don't have a vertical component. I mean, they're just sort of spinning this way. Maybe propellers are not the best example of that, but certainly rowers don't. And they row with one paddle, sweep, or two, scull, and they put a whole lot of power there. And they're not putting their weight over one side or the other, particularly with sculling, because you got two oars. So I didn't believe it in terms of power. In terms of lifting the boat up, I don't think it does much there. And even if it does lift the boat up, it's going to, at the end of the stroke, boat's going to go back down. It's going to go back further. It's going to bounce back in. So I can't see how that would necessarily be an advantage, even if it did occur. And then finally, for the stability, well, I did some tests with my wing, and I did some really long strokes, and I never had a problem with stability, just bringing it way back. Now, this is a stable Nelo 520. I think it's like 6 or 7. A Nelo scale of stability, which goes to 10. So maybe it is different with a really tippy K1, but I don't find that a problem. And so what I've demonstrated, I think, if nothing else, a number of things, is that you don't need to have a vertical component to put a lot of power in. You don't need a vertical component at the catch to lift the boat up, because even if you're lifting it up, I don't think it's much, and if you are, it's going to settle back down again further. And finally, I don't feel any instability whatsoever. Oh, and I can race with this as well. It does have this here, so that makes it a little bumpy on the back, but I find it braces pretty well. So there's that. So if nothing else, I think some of the assumptions we have about paddling are debunked, if I want to use that, or at least questioned by how well I find that this works. So there's that. Now, there was one other thing I was going to say about the stroke when I was talking about the angle, and I've forgotten what that is. Maybe it'll come to me. So I'm going to just concentrate on paddling a little bit now. I'm going to use a moderate length. I'm going to use my arms. Oh, that's the other thing, is that you can't use your arms. You shouldn't use your arms. Well, arm use is great here. If I want a full body workout, that was it. This is the paddle for you. And I found that it's actually easier to get my heart rate up with less perceived effort using the triplane paddle with at least a moderate or long stroke. Now, we'll have to see if that's really a good thing. Does it mean I'm working harder for the same speed or the same power putting in the water? I don't know. But in terms of fitness, it's great, because I want to work these muscles as well. And if I can get my heart rate up with less perceived effort, hey, I'm all for that, because I'm getting a workout. So right now, just cruising along here at about 5 miles an hour, a little over 5.3 now. Heart rate's like at 120. And I have to sort of make more of an effort to get that 120. Oh, the final thing, the stroke length, much longer. So I've done some tests, maybe I'll release the videos, just paddling and counting strokes between two buoys with this versus the wing paddle. And I don't think anybody should be surprised, because of the low cadence here and the amount of angle I'm getting out of the blade, that I get much more distance per stroke with the wing paddle. Sorry, with the triplane paddle that I'm using now. So I've gotten typically 50% more distance per stroke with this paddle. So that allows me to settle down and not to be paddling so furiously. And that's how it goes. So I think that's all I want to say about it right now. Thanks for coming along here in Los Angeles, Ballona Creek. And I may paddle along and just shut up and try some things, maybe make a few comments. But I'm going to bring it back to the bridge here, and then probably shut off my front camera at the ramp, and go out for a nice paddle. Yeah, do a few more rotation drills too, alongside. Trying to keep this hand right planted here is tricky. So many years of this stuff, right? So I think that's a good drill for both rotation and getting to see what the bottom hand is. Oh, I should add too, I think because of the low angle and reaching like this, as opposed to that, you can see the blade, the shaft is away. I can only get really one complete finger around, and these others. And so I'm guessing that what's called the crankshaft might be useful for this type of paddle, because I want to be able to have this angle here, not that. I don't want to have my wrist so far over and I can't get my fingers over, right? I want it more like bended and then back. So I think a crankshaft has some real potential because of the low angle of the triplane paddle. So that's the other thing. I think I've said just about everything I've learned over the last 3 months of playing with this. As I mentioned, this is prototype number 4, and I have some interesting ideas about prototype 5 and beyond, and it's actually worked out in so many ways much better than I ever imagined. It was sort of a wild hunch that I could do this, but I thought there'd be all kinds of problems, and I did run into some problems which I can talk about and I'm still dealing with. But for the most part, it's almost like Murphy's Law in reverse. Things have just worked out so well in developing this. That's Yhprum's law, Murphy's and backwards. Everything that could have possibly worked out well has basically worked out well on the triplane paddle development. I do have a patent pending on this. I should have mentioned that. I'll put in the notes. So that's something to think about. And there you go. Now I'm getting close to the dock here. I'm going to shut off the camera and go for a paddle. Triplane or otherwise. Or wing. I have my wing pedal back here too. So different strokes for different folks, and sometimes even different strokes for the same folks.